Today we welcome Purva Gupta, CEO of Lily AI. Hi,
Hi, Christine. How are you doing?
good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So excited and happy to chat with you today. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, and your interviews are awesome and very informative and useful actually in just overall. And so I'm really excited to be a part of it.
I am too. Let me just start by saying, why doesn't everyone have this? Or maybe they do, because I'm so blown away by all of the features and capabilities, which we'll get to. But I mean, I just want to start by saying, this is mind blowing and everyone should have it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think fundamentally, it's 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 so amazing that all of the details of the products that all these e-commerce stores create, it's like it's something that's under their control because they create all of these products, but this is missing from the entire sort of e-commerce sort of value chain. And we are the first company that's saying, let's inject all this back into the entire e-commerce value chain so that you can truly keep the customer or the consumer at the center of this entire value chain. So yeah, we would love to take it to everybody.
When you think about it, the real main element of search are the tags and the way you identify it, which is what you do. It is such a glaring missing piece.
That's not just in fashion, right? Like it's everywhere fundamentally. I think the like my view on this is that there are merchant driven attributes and then there are customer centric attributes. So merchant driven attributes is how you have a shop, you have all these products and you want to organize it in the way that you think people would want to buy. And so that's the world we've been living in so far. But uh, or that's what we've experienced as consumers so far, a merchant driven view of the store to say, okay, this is what you want to sell. But what's missing is this customer centric view to say, but I want to buy in so many different ways. I care about that, and I'm looking for that, and I want it for this event, and I want it like this. All of that, it doesn't fit into the merchant driven way of looking at the world, and that's why it falls flat. And then you have to literally do hit and trial, look at just lots of products, and try and just figure out what you're going to like or not. And then of course, like that whole process leads to you buy a lot, you return a lot. There is a lot of frustration, and all of that just leads to just you not wanting to do that a lot more again and again, but we are all in those shoes.
I couldn't agree with you more with respect to the way it evolved and why we are here today, which is either a preset or it's how even the retailer or e-commerce team is structured in their organization. It sometimes comes down to that, and it's very much so, as you said, merchant format driven. So much has changed, and so much of our screen experience has evolved, and yet that hasn't. And now we have Lily AI changing that and leading with the consumer perspective. You're a customer intent platform for discovery and conversion using product intelligence and consumer intelligence. And you can drive visual search, personalization, allocation, demand forecasting using a universal mathematic language. I swear to God, you're speaking my language here. I'm like weak in the knees. Let's go. You start.
Yeah, so like you were saying, fundamentally it's about injecting those product details and what do consumers think about those product details, which is their intent, injecting that back into every e-commerce stack, and starting with applications like search, which are very front and center of any e-commerce experience. We are the first CIP, or the first customer intent platform, where we can go and supercharge all of these different types of applications in the stack, and where we don't need our customers to rip and replace all these applications. They can keep their existing stack and we can still supercharge all of it and still impact up to 10% of their overall top line. We are not a search engine, we are not a demand application, like a forecasting application where search recommendations, filters and facets, all of these types of things that organize the e-commerce store, and going to upstream applications like all of the demand intelligence, which is demand forecasting, allocation planning, all of those. And so basically injecting the intent of the consumer into the entire retail value chain, and that's what we do. And one of the hard parts of why it was not done so far is because this is a hard technical problem also, to extract deep attributes out of images and text using image recognition and natural language understanding. And so, a lot of progress has been made in this space over the last few years. And so we certainly use a lot of computer vision and deep learning here to be able to extract these minute attributes out of images and text. That's sort of the core technology which is enabling the platform today, that is now delivering fantastic results, hundreds of millions of dollars of additional revenue for the large customers that we work with our which are the likes of Gaps, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and recent platforms like ThreadUp, and somebody who's been on your show before, somebody like Joe.
Do you think maybe it hadn't happened because you needed the the manual tagging, the text tagging to have an ecosystem on which to then build the visual tagging?
This majority status quo in retail still is merchants are hand labeling these attributes, day in, day out. It's inadequate, inaccurate, incomplete, inconsistent, lots of stuff, as you can understand, just rife with like manual, merchants going and labeling attributes, which is what happens for most of the players here. One of the big reasons why this hadn't happened so far is because it needed a lot of dirty work of getting really good training data. Your AI is as good as your training data. And what was happening before Lily, at least, is that there were players who were trying to get basic attributes and solve the merchant's problem, or automate the merchant's problem, or automate like the merchant-driven attributes, very basic attributes. So that would still not solve the problem. But there were players who were using AI to just automate that, and they were called automation tools and stuff like that. So that was still happening. I think what was required to be able to go deep into the space is really good training data, labeled data, that then helps you solve sort of a big chunk of the problem to have really good starting point, so that then you can fine tune the models and like get to where we are, which is a platform integrated into the retail stack. And so I think, um, with respect to personalization, for the last 20 years, there's like, I mean, it's not a new term. It's almost like I'm just way too inundated with a lot of companies that are trying to do personalization. What happened is that people were all circling around sort of the core issues of product and customer data. So there's the same customer data, the behavioral data that everybody was using, but without the depth of the product attribute data, it wasn't able to get to the desired results. Because if you are not able to get into very minute details and keep it at a segment level, still it will still not get personalized to the individual. And so product details play a huge role in distinguishing one individual from the other within the same segment. And that is a lot of dirty work that had to be done, which we've done now to be able to actually solve this problem.
So I feel like you were quietly working in the corner doing this dirty work. No one really knew it was happening. Personalization was, browbeat over our head, with a lot of tech companies coming forward, results being mixed, as you said. And then you just sort of like kind of burst on the scene with such an improved product for the retailers. Let's really dig into what it is you do for the retailers, so everyone listening can learn about it. And I will commend you. I think your website is excellent. It's very descriptive without going too far, too wordy, too techy. So I encourage everyone listening to check out the website, and there are a lot of links to information, as well as, of course, a demo. So let's dig in a little bit. Let's give a little bit of information that someone wouldn't get on the website in terms of really what you do.
Yeah. So basically, let's say when we start working with a customer, first we will, like, in the sales process itself, we will have a much better understanding of all the different types of applications that they are interested in. There's a lot that we can do with a customer, and we typically like to start with sort of one starting point and then expand into all the other things that we could do, especially in this world where there's a resource constraint at every level. It's a good idea to start with one thing where we can deliver a lot of value and then expand into other things. Typically, the first thing that we will do is take their catalog and attribute it with like all of these minutest details. And when we do that, we will first work with their merchandising team to align on sort of the entire taxonomy, which we will share with them and say, hey, this is what we have analyzed your store, and this is what we think should be the taxonomy that we recommend. But of course, the merchants know the products and sort of the nuances of the brand or retailer very differently, and of course they know the best. And so there is some level of customization if they want in the taxonomy. We are very happy to do that, because it's just a way of saying we call this attribute this in our system versus that. And so it's not a big deal for us, and we are very happy to make sure that we are able to customize some of those things, but making sure that there is a very small percentage that is actually getting customized, and sort of and we're aligning on this taxonomy to say, okay, these are all the different, like, this is the schema that we are going to be used to organize your store for all different applications. So and there may be different flavors that are used for different applications, of course. So let's say search might need a different flavor, recommendations might need a different flavor of those attributes, demand prediction might need a completely different flavor of those attributes, but still it's overall just organized, with sort of the same schema. The schema overall is so comprehensive of what we present to a customer that sort of that overall schema remains the same. This is part of why we think that schema needs to be agreed on earlier on. Let's say, for example, let me use an example definition of relaxed fit versus what is, let's say, fitted. And so since that initial schema has been agreed upon and how we call different things, then it's about what different flavors of those attributes do need to go into different applications. So like, for search, there might also be synonyms that are required with respect to how shoppers search for, let's say, a fitted shirt. And there might be 50 other ways that, shoppers look for a fitted shirt. And so all of those synonyms can also be shared with them, where the search index has a lot for them to be able to appropriately service the query. Versus for a demand prediction model, they might need proxy products or something else that is required for that application for us to optimize that. That schema remains the same, but different versions of whatever is required for the application is giving as output for the different applications.
You start by building the massive foundation, and then the retailer can build off of that whatever service they want, but they're guaranteed that schema, I'm using your words, that schema will apply and be the right building blocks for each of the different applications as it builds from there.
Absolutely. And I think the other benefit to that is that, like that same definition of relaxed fit then carries from different applications. And so, when you're using that in something like a demand intelligence versus when you're using that in analyzing search terms, and when you're using that in analyzing other things, like at least internally, they all sort of point to something that you can use like the same denominator everywhere.
Exactly, same denominator. There you have it. I love that. I love that. So, in terms of onboarding, you said one of the first things is you get all of the retailers' information, right? What kind of a process is that?
We've now worked with all different types of retailers. Getting access to their data is actually the simpler part of it. And so, whichever way that is easy for them, we are organized to be able to work with whatever format it is. And if it's a Excel download that they would like to do, if it's they would like to drop it at SFTP, whatever that is, it's fairly simple. I think the more important part is to get to this alignment of, just overall how the taxonomy would be and the outputs that they would like in how it goes back into their system. I think that's where there is more sort of nuance to how they are organized and how they would like to receive this data back so that it can go to the appropriate system.
I can see that causing an existential crisis for a retailer.
We've gained our own experience working with some of the largest brands and retailers. We've also definitely simplified, just learning from the experiences. I believe that the value that they get from this is just so massive that getting this organized is actually just in all of that is the easier part to do.
Do you find that as you're going through the process of the final approval that they're like, actually, we're a little surprised by this. Let us have an internal meeting about it and get back to you. Does that happen?
I don't think so. When we show them their own site and say that, okay, let's take search, or let's take recommendations, or let's take a few examples, is so intuitive to say that, listen, this is what it could have been, let's say, with Lily. And so I think it's It's more about like how we can best align with what their initiatives are. We can show them on their existing site through their like existing performance and just say that, hey, we can deliver massive results. And also we have fantastic customers that we have already proven this with, and it's live with their stores. And we can just take one of these large brands and show it on their live stores and say, hey, look, this is what we've done for them. People are able to understand very quickly what this is, how this is going to benefit them.
To now have the mirror held up to you that, here are your results. It's very rare that you get that opportunity to have that type of view of your business. And so I think it probably causes, as I said, like an existential crisis and a little bit of introspection and needing to discuss internally and just trying to say like, wow, okay, and then move forward.
The stack is so starved of this fundamental data that once people taste blood, they're like, all right, it's very intuitive to say, let's take it everywhere.
You're right. It is starved. It is truly just such a game changer. And again, I go back to everyone should have it. Tell us about your integration.
At this point in time, we are actually not integrated with some of the larger guys like a Shopify yet. And that's more because we've been focusing on sort of the enterprise large customers, and which is which shows in some of the types of customers that we work with. We're now going into sort of more of the mid-market space and also exploring with some of these. And so this is on the roadmap and sort of coming up in the next few months.
One of the things I want to explore further with you is demand forecasting, which is, by the way, I don't know if you know, it's a highly neglected area of retail.
And it still works on like Excel spreadsheets, and there's a lot of archaic software that's still going into there. With all due respect, like I mean, some of those things work very well, but at the same time, there is a lot there that needs upgrading. That is definitely one area which is a high investment and high impact area where we could make a big difference in how the whole store is organized. What's interesting is we are not even going there and saying, okay, we'll change everything. The approach that we're taking is saying that, okay, whatever you're doing, we can supercharge that. So because that friction of saying, okay, these are new guys, they want to come and rip and replace everything, that can very quickly become the other barrier to say, okay, I don't know if we are ready for that, and if we can go into that kind of a change. And so the first approach that we've taken is to say, okay, don't rip and replace what you have. Whatever models you're using, like we can still supercharge those existing models, and you can still see massive lift. And that helps both them and us to sort of get the conversation started. For us, we started with the digital applications as the first few applications where we wanted to implement and um, create this massive impact, such as search and recommendations and filters and facets and just the overall discovery space. But we very quickly understood that because the stack is so starved, we can take it to so many other applications upstream too. And so so we very quickly sort of added those applications also in our offering. And what we are seeing now is that more than 50% of our customers actually use those offerings also. And this has happened pretty quickly, where we are able to, where that's a very high impact area for any business, where they can see like, 9 figures of lift pretty quickly. For there is so much to be done. Like there is just so much that we can do here, that it's like we know it doesn't stop at this first point of however we've engaged and started working together.
Screaming that you automate everything and they'll never have to use Excel again isn't always necessarily the answer, because it's baby steps to then build trust in the data,
Yeah.
then and build trust in the results, and then see the lift, and then move on from there. It's a crawl, walk, run.
Yeah, 100%. All we're saying is that there is a very critical piece that's missing from all of these applications. And we're saying that everybody needs to add that ASAP. And that's going to give you a guaranteed massive lift. And it's just about figuring out what that is for you.
I would agree. I would agree. So what's going on in the future? What have you got on tap?
There's a visual search solution that we've recently launched with one of our customers, ThreadUp. There is a bunch of customer-facing applications that we are going to be launching in the future, but also some more upstream applications which are similar to demand intelligence, where there are just massive, just because it's more upstream and there is a lot of investment that goes into it, lot more value that can be delivered.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait for everyone to learn about this.
Likewise, Christine, then yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure.